All right, today we are all about St. K wines. Bold flavors, even bolder stories. It's a wild ride. We're going to uncover the world their founder built, unpack that surprise ownership change, and yeah, we'll definitely be tasting some wines along the way. You guys send in Instagram posts, newsletters, wine reviews, even some insider info. So buckle up. Let's discover what makes St. K so unique.
I gotta say, the first thing that hits you with St. K is the label art. It's like they built a whole visual universe around their wine.
Oh, absolutely. It's not your typical vineyard sunset on these bottles, right?
Yeah.
You've got aliens, post-apocalyptic landscapes.
Right.
Chris Bay, the founder, started St. K over a decade ago, and his vision, it clearly goes way beyond just, what's in the bottle.
You can definitely see the artistic side coming through, like that everything is under control label. It's a TV screen with static, like some huge event. Just cut the broadcast off. You immediately think, what's going on here? It draws you in.
It's eye-catching, for sure. And then you've got the Gravesend series, telling a story vintage by vintage. It's this character's journey to Gravesend, the last stop on Earth before, leaving the planet.
And the wines themselves mirror that journey. The 2018 Gravesend was a Carignan, which is known for like that rustic, earthy flavor. Then 2021 rolls around and it's Lagrange, a northern Italian grape that makes these super dark, kind of spicy wines. It's cool how they use the different grapes to weave this visual and vinicultural story.
I've never actually tried Lagrange. Sounds pretty interesting.
Oh, it's unique for sure. Not as common as some other grapes, but people who are into those bold flavors, they love it. And for the 2023 Gravesend release, they're going back to Carignan. Feels like a full circle moment in the story.
It's like we're watching a brand evolve in real time. But then, November 2024, things take a huge turn, right?
Yeah. Kieran Bay drops this Instagram post announcing he's selling St. K. Total shock for a lot of his followers, especially because he was about to move out of California.
Do you imagine the rumors flying around?
Oh, totally. Everyone's wondering, what happens to the brand now? And then, out of nowhere, Keith and Matt, they step in. Huge fans of St. K, they couldn't let it just disappear.
What a twist. So who are these new guys in charge? What do we know about them?
Well, Keith comes from a sound design background, musician at heart, so you've got that artistic link right there. And Matt, he's got this corporate design and marketing background, but his real passion, it's wine, especially Central Coast wines. He's even worked in food and beverage before, so he's not a newbie to this whole world.
So not just some random guys who bought a winery on a whim. They've got real connections to the industry.
Exactly, and this is where it gets interesting. Matt's fascination with this kind of obscure Italian grape, Malvasia Bianca, that's actually what first got him hooked on St. K.
Wait, so a love for one specific grape leads to buying a whole winery. That's wild.
It really shows you how these small things, these little passions, can completely change your life. And speaking of passion, Keith and his wife, Amy, they run this culinary club, Epicurean Santa Barbara. It's all about bringing food and wine lovers together for these special events and experiences.
Wow, so they're really deep in that food and wine scene, huh?
Oh, yeah, totally immersed. They've got this whole network of connections and a real understanding of how to build memorable experiences around wine. No wonder they were drawn to a brand like St. K with all that emphasis on storytelling and artistry.
It sounds like Keith and Matt, they bring a really cool mix of skills and experience to St. K. But what does that actually mean for the wines? Are they going to shake things up, or are they sticking to what made St. K, St. K?
From what we're seeing, it's all about respecting the brand's history, but also adding their own touch. They seem to be really on board with Chris's whole philosophy. Small batch, single vineyard wines that show off what makes each site special. They talk a lot about expressing the terroir, which basically means capturing all those unique flavors and smells that come from the soil, the climate, the whole environment of the vineyard.
That makes sense, especially with their connection to the Central Coast. Terroir is huge there.
Totally. It's about letting the grapes be the stars, letting that vineyard shine through. And just like Chris, they're not afraid to go big with the flavors.
So no wimpy wines in the St. K lineup.
Definitely not. They're all about wines with intensity, wines with depth. But they also get that balance is key. Acidity is important. They want their wines to be enjoyable, whether you're pairing them with food or just sipping them on their own.
And speaking of food, that Friends with Benefits wine club, it's really intriguing. Sounds like a great way to experience everything St. K has to offer.
Oh yeah, it's a fantastic way to dive in. Get those exclusive releases, discounts on purchases, invites to tastings, even recipes from Amy herself designed to pair perfectly with the wine.
Wow, they're going all out. It's clear they're thinking about the whole picture, from opening the bottle to that last bite of food.
Yeah.
But okay, before we get too hungry, let's talk about the actual wines we can expect to see coming from St. K under Keith and Matt.
Based on their newsletters and emails, they're keeping some of those fan favorites going. The 2023 Gravesend Carignan, it's almost bottled. And they're working on the second release of, like, the Snows of Yesteryear, a Sangiovese, which is, classic Italian.
Ooh, those always pair so well with food. I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Me too. And for the labels, they're sticking with artist Dane Curley. Smart move, I think.
Yeah, people love that artwork. So they're honoring the past, looking toward the future. It's cool.
Absolutely. They're also doing all these events and tastings all over California, really getting out there, meeting the people. Makes you wonder, what are the critics saying?
Oh, that's a good point. Are the wines living up to the hype?
Well, Owen Bargreen, he's a big deal when it comes to West Coast wines, and he's been raving about them. He uses words like evocative and full throttle, which basically means lots of intensity and character.
Evocative is an interesting way to describe wine. What do you think he means by that?
I think it's about how the wine transports you. Evokes a sense of place, maybe a memory, even an emotion. For example, he gave the 2021 Everything is Under Control, their Cabernet blend, a 95, called it dense and decadent with notes of black fruit, tobacco, spice.
Okay, that one's going on my to-try list for sure. Sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, it sounds delicious. He was also really impressed with the 2021 Yokai Chardonnay. Gave it a 93, loved those brioche, lemon rind, orange zest, and pink lady apple flavors. Rich but bright, a great combo.
And the Yokai Pinot Noir got a 92 from him, with those pretty red fruit notes, red rose water, cardamom.
Seems like they're doing something right with these wines. And don't forget those wine enthusiast reviews by Matt Ketman. He's been loving them too.
True. He gave the 2021 Everything is Under Control a 92, mentioned that seriously rocky minerality, which, probably comes from that unique terroir where those grapes are grown. The Yokai Pinot also scored a 91. He loved that zippy acidity and those tangy cranberry and raspberry flavors.
And for the Yokai Chardonnay, a 93. For those rich aromas of browned butter, butterscotch, and sea salt, clearly a winner.
Okay, so we've got rave reviews, a unique story, and this crazy ownership change. It feels like there's a lot to be excited about with St. K, both for their past and their future.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting is Keith and Matt's philosophy on wine, all about having a variety of styles to match different moods, food pairings, occasions.
I love that. It makes wine feel more approachable, less like stuffy. It's not about following strict rules. It's about finding what you enjoy.
Exactly. And you see that in St. K's lineup. They've got everything from those light and crisp whites to the big, bold reds, all sorts of grapes and winemaking techniques.
So no matter what you're feeling, St. K has got it covered. And remember that Malvasia Bianca that got Matt hooked in the first place. The 2022 Flower Bomb got a 92 from Ketman, who called out that textural minerality and sizzling acidity. It's like that one wine kicked off this whole wild journey.
Amazing how life works sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And let's not forget about those sold-out favorites, like the Around the Way Rosé and She Doesn't Like Diamonds.
I saw those mentioned in their newsletter. Seems like people can't get enough of them.
That scarcity makes them even more desirable, right? It
Yeah.
seems like there's just a lot to look forward to with St. K.
I'm totally on board. They've got this great foundation of bold wines and storytelling, and with Keith and Matt leading the way, it feels like a new chapter is starting.
It's like watching a brand transform right before our eyes. And the best part is, they're bringing us all along for the ride.
Now, we've talked a lot about those new releases, but what about the library wines? You mentioned they're releasing some of those rare bottles to their club members.
Yeah. These are wines that have been aging perfectly, getting more and more complex over time. We're talking just a handful of bottles from each vintage, some going all the way back to their first vintage in 2013.
Whoa, that's like drinking history.
It really is. For a wine lover, getting to try those library wines, it's a real treat. It's like tasting different chapters of St. K's journey, different winemaking styles. And speaking of experiencing St. K, they've got some exciting events planned for the next few months. They're doing these intimate tastings in Paso Robles in March and April, which would be a great chance to meet Keith and Matt and learn about their winemaking firsthand.
I love Paso Robles. The wine scene there is amazing.
It really is. And for people who prefer a bigger crowd, they've got events in Santa Barbara, Chino Hills, and Encinitas in March, and another one in North Orange County later in the year.
Looks like they're really hitting the road, bringing St. K to the people.
Exactly. And mark your calendars for May 4th. That's their big spring release event in Orange County.
Ooh, that sounds fun. Any details yet?
They're keeping some things secret, but they've mentioned music, food pairings, and of course, all the new wines to try.
Sounds like they're going all out.
Totally. It's the ultimate St. K experience, connecting with their community, finding new favorites.
Before we wrap up this part, I want to go back to something we touched on earlier. We've talked about how bold and complex St. K's wines are, but are they actually drinkable? Like, are they meant for sipping and savoring, or can you just, relax and enjoy a glass?
That's a great question. It's one thing to make wines that impress critics and collectors, but it's another thing entirely to make wines that people actually want to drink.
Totally. So where does St. K fit in?
From what we've gathered, they seem to find that sweet spot. You can definitely geek out on the complexity and all that, but they're not so fancy that you can't just chill and enjoy a glass with friends. And remember Matt's whole philosophy: different wines for different moods and occasions.
So whether you're celebrating something special or just winding down after a long day, there's a St. K wine for that.
It's all about finding the right wine for the right moment, and St. K makes that super easy with their diverse portfolio.
Something that really strikes me about St. K is how much they emphasize that connection between wine and food.
Yeah.
It's not just about what's in the glass, it's about how it makes the whole meal better.
Yeah, for sure. They get it, Wine can really elevate a meal, add a whole other dimension of flavor and just pure enjoyment.
Well, it makes sense when you think about Keith and Amy's Culinary Club, Epicurean Santa Barbara. They've been in that world forever, bringing people together to experience those perfect pairings.
Right. They really understand how those flavors play off each other, how they can complement each other, and it feels like that passion for food is like baked into St. K's DNA.
You can tell, right?
Right.
The way they talk about their wines, they focus on balance, acidity, food friendliness. It's not just about big, bold flavors. It's about wines that you can actually enjoy with a meal.
And remember those recipes they send out with their wine club shipments, designed specifically to go with the wines. It takes all the guesswork out of pairing, creates this whole sensory experience for their members.
It's like they're saying, here's the wine, here's the food, now just sit back and enjoy the show.
Exactly. It shows how dedicated they are to making wines that not only taste amazing on their own, but also make a meal even better. It's not about rigidly matching a specific wine to a specific dish. It's more about thinking about the vibe, the company, the whole setting.
So it's more about creating the right feeling rather than following a bunch of rules?
Exactly. Stuff like the weather, the occasion, even the personalities of the people who are eating.
That's so cool. It shows that the perfect pairing, it's really subjective, it's personal.
And that's what I love about St. K. They're not telling you how to enjoy their wines. They're giving you the tools to create your own experience, something that's unique and memorable.
It's like they're giving you the ingredients and saying, go ahead, be the chef of your own wine adventure.
What a great way to put it. But whichever wine you choose, I hope you really savor it, appreciate all the work and passion that went into making it.
And raise a glass to St. K Wines, a winery that's not afraid to be different, to tell stories, and to create experiences that stick with you long after that last sip.
Cheers to that.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into St. K. We'll catch you next time for another adventure